picture of mid 19th century painting. If you see this painting, there is something beautiful about it because it is painted well. Now, if you see it carefully, you will know where it is wrong. Just a couple of seconds, and then I would go where I would suggest you where is wrong. So if you look at it carefully, this talks about a steeplechase and horses are jumping, and the picture is about how horses are jumping. So the painter who painted this picture had his version of how the horse would be when it is jumping. Now, all of us who understand the way horses jump would know what is the problem. So, but then during that period, when he was painting, there was no clear-cut reasoning behind why or how a horse jumps. So the question which everyone asked during that period is, if I consider the aerial phase of the galloping horse, do all four hoofs of the galloping horse ever leave simultaneously the ground? Okay, so if you look at it, answer is yes. As per the painter, you can see that all the four hoofs of the horses are in air when it's jumping. But no one knows how the hoofs would be with respect to each other. Okay, so there is no clear-cut experimental evidence or a picture which tells that part. And so this started this field of stroboscopy, or what we call as the flash photography. It's very, very common now with all our latest mobiles. You can do very fast frame rates. So this particular photography, which is 1/60th of a second time resolution, this is something which people have done long back, suggests that yes, at some point, all the four hoofs of the horse simultaneously leave the ground. But unlike what was perceived by the painter, they are not going away from each other, but they are towards each other, as you see in these two frames, frame 2 and frame 3. And so, flash photography began, and the idea of freezing in motion had started. Okay, you can look at this particular Wikipedia discussion on high-speed photography. And so, there was this main concept of photography started, which says that to capture a snapshot of a fast event, one needs to probe it much faster. Okay, so why am I speaking all this? I'll come to it slowly. Now, this is how the horse is galloping. And like many of the researchers, people tried to see how other animals jump. And so people have done research on this poor animal. They found that it also runs the same way. And so they have decided that all the mammals would run the same way. Okay, where the hoofs would leave the earth simultaneously and they are facing each other. It went on for some time till one guy thought, why not extend this further? Because when someone says all mammals run the same way, all means all mammals. But can we generalize that all mammals? The answer is no. People have done that for elephant. It found that it is not so for the elephant. In fact, you'll be surprised that elephant runs very, very fast. Despite its unseemly bulk body, it has its own unique style. And you see like this, people have done photography and found that at no point elephant would give all the four hoofs in air. Always one of this limb which is touching down and touching the ground. And where is it published? It's an nature paper. Okay. So the point which I want to say is that it is important to find the right research problem. And second, you cannot simply give up something just because someone else has published or someone else has generalized something. So research is something which is continuing, as the word research means. Let's continue further and see how fun some guys can have when they do research. So this is a paper published in New England Journal of Medicine. It's one of the very highly cited papers, journal, where they talk about chocolate consumption, cognitive function, and knowledge. And the main result of this paper is so and so. If you look at it, you see that the chocolate, it's a graph between chocolate and the number of loads per 10 million population. So it wants to plot how many people eat chocolates and how many get Nobel Prize. And you see that the Sweden and Switzerland are right on top of it. because obviously Sweden and Switzerland do produce a lot of chocolates. So many of us would like to have Ferrero Rocher, Lindt. These are all the Swiss brands. So you have this Swiss chocolates which are there, and we know that Swiss also produce a lot of Noble laureates. Okay, and then I don't see anywhere India here. Probably in 2003, not many were there. However, the number would be very, very small somewhere else. Okay, now there is something very funny about this particular paper. It says that chocolate consumption enhances cognitive function, which is a sine qua non for winning the Nobel Prize. So it goes on to generalize that you eat a lot of chocolates, you end up winning Nobel Prize. And it closely correlates with the number of Nobel laureates in each country. It remains to be determined whether the consumption of chocolate is the underlying mechanism for the observed association with improved cognitive function. We're not sure about whether people get Nobel or not, but then if you say this to any parent or any elder, they will say you will get in diabetes. Okay, so that's a very funny way of doing things. But then look at the author Frank H. Mazzarelli, and it turns out to be that he reports on daily consumption of chocolates, and he works for Lindt dark varieties. And so this talks about the acknowledgements, which is important to consider when we read research. I think that's where the last section of the previous speaker was. You have to worry about the acknowledgement because that tells the truth more or less. So this guy could publish a very good journal, or he could put his own statistics, but something which goes on to advertise that please eat chocolates, right? This is the second point which I wanted to emphasize. The third one is something more interesting. It's about a paper on published in Physica B. It's on detection of Earth rotation with a diamagnetically levitating gyroscope. So this paper was published in 2001 Physica B journal, and the first author is a very famous person, Jim, and he is the one. He is the Nobel laureate for work on graphene, along with Professor Kozlov, 2010. So Professor Jim, when he was working on that particular work, he was a sole experimental author in this one. And the rumor was that he submitted this paper to few journals. They got rejected, saying that you cannot publish a single author experimental work because for experiment you need help of others. Then he said, okay, fair enough. So he said, fine. People don't want to accept me working alone. Then he remembered something else. He did have a companion in his lab, and that companion was named HAMS Dead Tisha. Okay, so the first name is Tisha and the last name seems to be HAMS. Now, if you read it carefully, it means something else. It's nothing but the pet of Professor Jim, who is named Tisha, and this is nothing but a hamster. Okay, so he published a paper with the hamster as a co-author. He had his own quirky lifestyle. I suggest you to go back and look at it. Along with Nobel Prize, Professor Jim did win the Ig Nobel Prize. Okay, he's one of the earlier recipients of Ig Nobel Prize, which awards those guys who do a lot of work on something that is not really relevant to society. But anyway, have a look at it. Now, why this particular slide, why this particular work or the work by Graphene is important is the next slide, next thing where I say it's a Nature paper, it's an ACS Nano paper in 2020. And the title says that will any crack put into graphene increase its electrocatalytic effect. As the name suggests, it's a perspective article. I would just come back to explain what is a perspective article. So the authors are so hooked, are so fed up with people publishing so much on graphene that they did something very funny. What they have done is they added some bird droppings, or in simple words, chicken shit, and they put it on graphene. They did experiment for electrocatalytic activity and found that if you do that, the electrocatalytic activity of the graphene increases more than the non-doped graphene. Okay, so the authors go on to say that you cannot simply change whatever you want and keep publishing unless you understand what is happening. And graphene is one particular material which has taken the world at a storm. Okay, it is simply a phenomenal material. So people could do a lot of things without really understanding why it's happening. So to put everything, whatever I said till now, the question is, who says research is good? If get the right problem, if you have the right motivation, as that guy who published his paper on chocolate consumption, or if you have the right author, as you see this guy publishing with hamster, it's fun. You can do a lot of work and research. Saying this, I would introduce myself. I'm Santosh Kumar from IIT Hyderabad. This talk is specifically on literature survey. As you see, whatever I say had a literature proof to it. And so to do anything, we should know what has happened. Unless you know what has happened, you will not really be able to proceed further. That's where the literature survey is important, right? So I would answer these questions: why, what, and how to do literature survey. There are a few things which I would be talking, which may have relevance or overlap of what was already presented by the previous speaker. Bear with me. And also, second point which I should tell you all is that this talk is specifically meant for those entry-level researchers who want to know what is literature survey. Many things may look very trivial. In fact, when I was making these slides, I realized how trivial we think when we start our research. There is a lot more to know than what we have done. Okay, so this is something which has motivated me further when I was preparing slides for this talk. And therefore, please pay attention. Just even though you think it is very trivial or few things are a overlap of previous talk. Yeah, few points to consider at the outset. Most students starting out the research work, including those who are at the much advanced stage, right? When they're writing the thesis, which means they have finished the research work, are never made to sit down and taught how to search for literature. No one really tells you. In fact, most of the professors assume that the kids know what is the next trend of fashion. So they must be able to look at what is the new literature. So it is something which everyone assumes you should know. In fact, professors do feel that if I tell my student how to do research, it's like it's not. He has come for the research, PhD his own work, so he should figure out how to do it. The idea is good, but sometimes it is painful for the student because most of the times the student probably never ask the professors because they find it shameful. I think it is shameful to reveal their incompetence in front of the peers. Therefore, many students do feel completely lost to begin searching for literature. No one knows where to start. I'm sure 60%, 70% of these people who are, or of those who are listening to me would agree to it. Okay, if you don't agree, then the point one is important. Okay, which you are feeling shameful about that acceptance. So it is true that we are never taught how to research, how to do research, and we feel shameful. Don't do that. Oh, if you want to know something unknown, where do we first think about yourself? Now, my kid who is grade 3 knows the answer. It is go to Google. Google, see, most often if you type something in Google, you end up with a lot of results. And most often the first result is a Wikipedia. Okay, and statistics do show that 90% of the people don't go past page 1 of the Google system. Therefore, we are at the mercy of Google. Okay, in Telugu we say Google Ammatali, right? Whatever it tells you, you just do it because no one has the patience, no one has the time, and it's understood that 90% is in the first place always is most relevant. So Google would have its own motivations. Those who are doing more about this part will know it. It's not always that the best results are the first results, but then most of the people do not go beyond the first page. So let's ask the question, what is research? I typed the research and the answer I got from Wikipedia. Okay. And the answer was this. The word research is derived from Middle French recherche, which means to go about seeking. The term itself being derived from Old French called recherche, a compound word from re or searcher, meaning search. Okay, it's about doing the search again. Now, if I want to ask the same, if I go about reading the Wikipedia, see what is scientific research. It means scientific research is a systematic way of gathering data and harnessing curiosities. All good. This is how define literature, research. Now, What is relevant to me for my present talk is a small number which is here, 4. See, this 4, if you click on that 4, it shows you references, and that 4 refers to the Merriam-Webster.com, which is a dictionary website which gives you information about the various words. Now, why is it important? It is important that even if you read something in Wikipedia, okay, Wikipedia is a source of knowledge, right? That matter, all the search items which you do is source of knowledge. But when you say something, it is important to tell from where you got that information. I can say you I got it from Wikipedia, but when you go to Wikipedia, Wikipedia has to say from where it got. Otherwise, we speak in air, thin air. You can say whatever you want, but there is no base to it, right? So it is important that you always have a reference from where you pick up a word or a concept with which you are not the original owner. Okay, I'm not someone to say what is research. I will go look for it. And okay, so this is a simple example to give you information of referencing. So here I would answer you what is referencing and why is it important. It's very important. Yes, why? Because it helps you with academic integrity and plagiarism. There are talks by other speakers in the same webinar series which talks about technical writing, which talks about how to do many things. So I will not go deep into this particular concept, but I would just briefly introduce you what I mean by academic plagiarism. The plagiarism is presenting another person's work or ideas as your own. Plagiarism is a serious breach of ethics. Okay? Something which people keep saying. I'm sure the previous speaker also spoke about it. It is very unethical for various reasons. The most important 3 reasons are here. It is unethical because it is a form of theft. By taking the ideas and words of others and pretending that they are your own, you are stealing someone else's intellectual property. Secondly, it is unethical because the plagiarizer subsequently benefits from this theft. Thirdly, a degree is, for that matter, the PhD degree for which we are all working, right? A degree is an evidence of the holder's abilities and knowledge. If a student gains employment on the basis of this qualification, they do not have earned, they may be at risk to others. Right? It's like building a bridge without the understanding of the pillars, because it has copied pillars somewhere. Now, these are the various economic types of plagiarisms: copy-paste, paraphrasing, reasoning, style copying, copying analogies or metaphors, copying creative ideas or solutions, buying papers, presenting others' work. All these things without acknowledging is considered as plagiarism. So, if you look at all my slides, you would see some link which I have always put in from where I have taken this. So, I am making sure that I am not plagiarizing or doing things without acknowledging the author. Okay, so you may have a look at it. This is something which all of you should do when you write a paper, you say something, you present something. Make sure that you acknowledge from where you have taken those material. Now, how do you avoid plagiarism? Simple 3 ways of avoiding. First is to summarize. Whatever you feel, you may find a lot of original text. You may try to write on it and compress it. Right? Your words are there, your understanding is there. Okay, that's what it means by summarize. Second thing is, when you quote, you must reference the original source. The text produced is the exact length of the original text quoted. You must use the original author's exact quote and put quotation marks around them. Include a page number from the original source from which you borrowed the author's original language. In fact, this last one forms the bibliography or the reference section of your paper. And third one is to paraphrase. You try to write it on. Now, if you see all these things, it is important that you need to have some source. What are you on? And where do you get that source? That you get from searching, which is what is literature search. So literature search is very important for us. And so referencing is important because it helps show that you have been thorough and careful in your academic work, indicates what material is the work of another person and what is from other source, indicates what material is your original work since you have provided a citation for work that is not your own, allows the reader to refer back to the external material that you have stated or discussed. So this is something where, let's say you write something in one sentence, people think, let me know more about it. You should be able to look at the original paper and try to dig more out of information. That provides the reader with an indication of quality and authority of the material. The published article in a respected journal, unpublished opinion piece, or a popular online website, all this is how to be put. Of course, the relevance and importance of the material is dependent on your topic. Referencing lets the reader see if you have included up-to-date seminal, which is earlier influential work, and material central to the research topic. So all these points are important to bring out the academic integrity of your own. If I read a paper and I don't see proper reference and I will not have proper respect for the person, because it is clear that this guy did not do a lot of literature search. He might have missed something, meaning whatever he has come out could be not what is up to date. Say someone else has already worked on that kind of information. So all these things are possible if you don't, you're not sure about doing the proper reference. Now, let's start. Let's ask how to start research. This is something which has an overlap with the previous talk. So it's all about asking the questions: what, where, why, and how. Right? There's a movie, right? It says "Enduku Emiti Ela." The same thing. That's what is research all about. Oh, this is the focus. How do you do that? You identify a focus of research, develop a research question, define key terms, select research, establish a sample population, gather and analyze data, interpret and share results. So all these things form one particular research project. So again, bringing back to the point of this particular talk, the first point is always identify the focus of research, and the second point is develop a research. To do these two, you need to have an understanding of what has been done. In order to select the right research method, you should know what all are the methods available. Now, if you want to establish a sample population, gather and analyze data, interpret and share results, you should know how our work which you have started or the kind of work which you are doing interpreted by other authors. And that's how you build up the knowledge, present what is your original contribution. That's how you publish a paper. Where to start? It's important that we know where to start. That's the main problem. Always remember this slide. Let's start at the very beginning because that's a very big, good place to start. It's a famous song from the movie Sound of Music. And in literature and research, we start with literature survey, right? This is the point of it. And how do we define literature survey? In an account, literature survey is an account of what has been published on a topic by scholars and researchers. It discusses published information in a particular subject area, and sometimes information in a particular subject area in a certain time period. So all these things are how you define literature review or literature survey. Now, it should always, there's something else to be known about literature survey. It is not just an annotated bibliography, not just a list of previous works, not a book review, not a section of your research. Literature survey means that things in entirety, right? It is something that helps you or guides you to define, find out, identify a problem. So in its totality, it's called literature survey. Just to give a comparison to the most used word, literature review, it means literature review is going to the depth of the literature survey. Review is reviewing what has been done. Surveying is knowing all that has been done. Okay, when you do literature survey, you look around things. But when you want to review, you want to go deep into each of the things and bring out exactly what you need. Okay. right? You have a 10-page article, but then when you cite that work, referring to that work, you don't refer to the first one and the last one. You want to pick up what is important for you. Let's say a method from it, or data from this, or the number from it. So all those things will give you the information you're looking for. Then if you want to collect such data from various papers and put together and make one particular structure, that's called the table. And so it is important that you understand the difference between survey and the, even though these two are always interchanged, we talk literature review, literature survey, the same words, but keep that in mind. Okay, again, continuing further, reviews of the literature are not summaries, they are arguments that there is a gap that needs to be filled. That you have sound reasons for believing your hypotheses are likely to be true, that your methods have been well thought through in relation to your research goals, plus an exposition of the particular background knowledge needed to make the progressivity. So it is important that you collect the right information in order to justify yourself and then others that are doing the right thing. It is important. Otherwise, people think you are on a wild goose search. You don't want to spend 6 months, 8 months doing something which people have already done. It's important to do. Okay, typically, you do literature survey for writing a review paper, for writing introduction or discussion of a research paper, or a thesis or dissertation, to get onto a new direction of research, or when you write a research. So all these things are the reason why you need to do literature survey. Now, how do I start a PhD topic? These are the various points one should keep in mind. Define research topic, search and research literature, take notes while reading, choose type of review, keep review focused, be critical and consistent, find a logical structure, make use of feedback. Feedback can be from your peers or from your professor, etc. Include own relevant research objective, and importantly, be up to date, not forget all the work. So if I start something today, I have certain literature which I have already, I keep working on this, and without my own knowledge, I would have spent the next 6 months doing experiments. Now, within the 6 months, someone would have published exactly what I am planning. If I am not careful about being up to date, it would so happen that someone has already published what I've been working on. At the end of my 6 months, I get a result, or to write a paper, I would figure out. That's the point about this finding a new article. If you plot the graph between joy in y-axis and relevance to your thesis in the x-axis, with the time of searching, you will slowly come to find the right paper. It's exponential growth. You suddenly slowly get to the point where you find the right paper which is really relevant to your thesis. And if you're really happy, then you start reading the paper and you found that, God, you already wrote my thesis, because that could be the work which you have finished working or which you have planned. Okay, so if you are in the field, if you are in this business of research, be careful to meet this kind of free fall of joy. So you have a lot of good days and bad days, and sometimes on bad days you searching and you search so much that your search results become zero, and they're making you think, God, the Google doesn't know what I am talking about. Even Google cannot find the right requirement of your own search. Okay, it can so happen. In fact, I pick up all these things from this nice website, PhD Comics. It's piled higher and deeper. It's a beautiful collection of cartoons. Have a look at it. Okay, if you're in PhD, it is important that you keep yourself, engaged with something which not boring like your research work. Okay, sometimes have fun. And this is a beautiful website for doing. Yeah. Coming back to my talk, how do I define a research topic? Describe, summarize, evaluate, clarify, find a theoretical basis of your research, determine nature of your research. So all these things will together to define your research topic. And trust me, it's an evolution of thought which start from the day one of the research. And you may not be surprised. You don't need to be surprised if you don't end up with a proper definition of a research topic even after 2 years. Okay, because getting the right topic if you're doing on your own is very, very important. Very, very difficult. You do have help from your supervisor, but then now people are working so much with this information, internet era. Information is so fast that people can do their work much faster. For example, let's say you have a topic to work on. Your lab has certain equipment, certain techniques. Your work requires something, so you need to develop that which is not available. It may take time. You may take time to develop it. In the meantime, you have some other lab which has exactly that you're looking for, and they just do the work and publish, even with your knowledge. Okay, so these things are pretty common. Don't get disheartened. It's important that you zero down your right research topic, because once you know what you want to do, you might have spent so much time reading that you know exactly what. So it may finish your actual work in 2 days. No problem. Don't worry. Don't get frustrated if you're not able to define your research topic within the first 1 year. Okay? But it is important that you keep reading. Just because I'm saying it's okay to wait till 1 year doesn't mean that you start today and after 1 year come back and say, okay, now let me get done. It doesn't work that. Then comes the point considered for research topic. What is the general area of research significant, important, interesting? In what ways the current set of knowledge lacking, limited in need to understanding? One point to consider. Second set of points are what are the grounds for believing that this is true and worth investigating? What theories guide research design, analytical approach, and data interpretation, and how did they do so? So this part is 2 things which I gave. There is something which you need to get out of your survey. How has thinking in this area evolved over time, and how has this informed the approach you took in your investigation? So this part requires your own critical way of looking at the literature. And why was the particular methodological approach used in the research believed to be the most effective? Given constraints, what potential weakness does this approach have, and how will these be controlled? So these things would come when you start actually your work and try to understand whether you're in the right direction based on someone else's prediction, someone else's publication. Okay, you follow some work, you see whether they are able to get, whether you're able to get the same thing. So all these things are, like giving a feedback for yourself and revisiting it again and again. That's why it makes it so interesting. Now, the final point which you should consider is what are the different ways to base the concept terminology research used in the research literature. Some wrong in the sorry. How will they be taken if you define it, and what are the choices to be of the definition? So all these things are crucial to come up with the right research topic. Now, the various steps to obtain and manage the information are here. You have handbooks, work from your previous students, work from your professor, previously written reviews. You can track key authors, use paper management sources, define or remove irrelevant papers, know the limitations in previous work, find new angles, incorporate new angles. So these 2 is why research still survives till date. Okay, each of us have our own opinion, and we are all different. The way we think is different. Even though 2 of us are sitting and working together, the way I approach my problem is different next to me. So it is what makes us unique, and this is why for every problem we can have our own way of looking at it. The way you solve it, the way you approach gives you a new solution, which may pave way for further. And that is the beauty of research, and make sure that you develop your own unique way of it. These online resources are available. I just listed out few. Okay, these things are pretty common. We'll come back to these links much later in another few minutes. Okay, I just listed out few things here. Any of these websites would give you what you want to look at. Now, where to start? First step to begin with. Choose a review article relevant. This is always the first step to begin. Okay, you need to pick up the right review article which would introduce you to the field. A review article to research is textbooks to a school or college student. A textbook does the job of introducing concepts to a student. A review article does the job of introducing the entire research field. Okay, so it can be a mini or full review. You can start with short review just to get the feel of it. Focusing on research which are happening in the last few years. Okay, few things you pick up once you get a full idea, then you go for a full review. It's much bigger. It could be a full review, could be more than 60 pages, 70 pages of work with about 600 to 1000 references. Okay, so full review has the advantage and more freedom to cover and have narrative systemic reviews like qualitative. You can have perspective articles, opinions, etc. Various things are available, but always start with a paper which is not a regular paper, but something which talks about a collection of papers, because you need to be used to the content. Just keep in mind, PhD is something which one cannot earn by writing an exam. You need to do the work. To do the work, something original has to come. Something can come up only when you are thinking originally. Okay, further to read a lot of inputs. So that's where the comes into play. You need to be really focused in what you want to do. Right? When you take a full review, a paper of 60 pages would introduce you to more than 500 references. Now, all these 500 references will speak various things. Keep in mind the review guy, the guy who writes the review, keeps his focus. So he is able to compress, considering each paper is 10 pages and you have 500 pages, 5000 pages of text into 60 pages of text. Okay. This is the point which he is able to do because he knows what he wants to write. That's why keeping the focus is very important. And second point is most critical is the picking up relevant information. You need to be always critical in your thinking. If you're reading, have that thing in mind. Is it important for me or not? If it is important, how is it? Can I do my work in this way? Can I do my work in that way? So you always do experiments in your brain. Then you think about it, you cannot really make it, right? And start research. So much of that organization of literature becomes very. Why is it so important? Because the reality vendor. See that guy sitting in front of a computer with a lot of papers. Now, even with so much, he is not sure what is happening. This is the reality which every one of us have to go through when we do research. There's too much of literature, too much of information around, too much of knowledge. How do I get what I want? That's where the organization of literature is important. Because you can't remember all. You can't write things later. Start writing now. Take short notes, see what is happening. Okay? And keep focus again. If you lose focus, you're lost. Right? It is important that you keep focus. When you talk about this interdisciplinary, it's much more important. You need to be balanced with the need to make a review relevant to the broad audience. All these things are important. And then develop a logical structure. What is a logical structure? Structuring can be chronological, organization, historical, and development context. The classical studies organization outline the major work in your research area. All the benchwords should be acknowledged. It could be topical or thematic organization, which means that you divide the sections representing categories or conceptual subjects. You can have an inverted pyramid organization, which means that you start from broad perspective, be more specific. Eventually, this is how you eventually write a paper. You start from much broad view, then you focus the actual contribution, and then you increase that to explain how relevant is your contribution to a broad audience. So this is what it means by this pyramids here. Inverted triangle at a triangle. And the way you do the sequences, introduction, literature review, such question, results. So this is how you write the paper. But to do these things, you should have your own logical way of thinking. This is what I'm telling you. There are few common errors to do. Okay, that is hurrying through review to get started. That you will miss something that will improve your research. Don't be in a hurry. Relying too heavily upon second source. Concentrating on finding. Few people do this. Things of reading abstract and thinking, maybe not useful. No, don't do that. Look at the method which they have. Let's say certain paper, certain work got very big number, which you're not able to get in your own way. See how that guy has done. Most often, they would have done something which may not be relevant to you. Even if they get the same, even if they get a number which is relevant to your research. Okay. The question which they are answering, for which they need that particular number, is different question. Okay, I'll give you an example later. Now, overlooking resources other than academic journals. Don't forget newspaper articles, magazines, blogs, etc. It can happen that you may find something more trivial. That is beautiful way of telling, because sometimes you may find the best results coming out of materials which you think are not useful, which you think everyday in your life. I can go on giving examples on this, not do it, but make sure that you broaden your. Then the next error would be searching too broad or too narrow of a topic. And third, last point is inaccuracy in compiling bibliography. When you say inaccuracy, you should know what is the definition of accurate and precision, right? You all would have known about it, so I'm not going to it. Inaccuracy is like you have a problem which you are looking for, and you don't really develop a literature correction of that problem which is accurate for this guy. Okay. You may keep on finding a lot of literature which may not, majority may not correspond to or relevant to your actual problem. So this is what is meant by inaccuracy. So very, very important and most common error, that you keep downloading papers without they being relevant to you. So make sure that it's not happening in your case. And always watch your step. Vagueness due to inappropriate generalizations. Don't keep generalizing. In fact, this is what I meant by the very first example I gave you about generalizing how animals run. Right? That's what it is. Don't be too vague. And inappropriate generalization. Don't have limited range. Limited range again talks about the second example I gave you about the chocolate consumption and Nobel laureates, right? It so happens that Switzerland has Nobel laureates, doesn't mean that they are getting the Nobel because they're eating chocolates. So the second observation of that paper, first observation is always that the guy who wrote the paper is getting money to do that. Like our journalism which is happening nowadays. Let's not go too political, yeah, but this is how it is. Then comes the insufficient information. It might happen that you do not have sufficient information to really get knowledge about what you're looking at. You may have too much of irrelevant materials. So this guy happens because of inaccuracy in compiling of public information, omission of contrasting materials, omission of recent works. So this omission of contrasting materials happen when you are not thinking what is important. You are only looking from one point of time, one point of view, and you are saying, let me keep on collecting the on. So it is important that you do that. You end up having so much of work, which leads to this literature overdose. Too many literature, too much of literature. It is too piling of. And suddenly you realize I did too much of reading. When to start and where to start, right? So you should reach a point logically where you know that yes, I should stop research. Start doing some work based on whatever literature, so that you somehow manage your work with the literature. As I said, if you keep doing without reading the literature, you end up doing a work which is already published. Or if you keep reading, there's always someone who's doing the work which you think is relevant. Okay, so both of these are possible, and that's where the time management is important. Okay, it's a beautiful slide on time management. I'm sure one of the talks in the further webinar series is on time management, so I will not talk about it. It is important that you should know how to manage your time effectively so that you don't waste your precious time. And to do time management, mind maps seem to be very interesting. Mind maps are a project reflection of what you want to have in your mind on paper or some. So you have in your mind, you always have, I do this because of this. So you can think about it and try to correlate a lot of things. That's what our mind is doing most effectively. That's why human race is so. So all these things can be very difficult when you have too much of. So it is nice that if you can really logically do this kind of mind maps. Mind maps are available. You can write it on whiteboard app, or you can write it on notebook. A lot of things. Okay. So there are a lot of softwares for this for doing mind maps. Right. Many things are free. You can look at it. If you do not want to do those things, you can simply use your Microsoft OneNote or use a simple notebook to record your plan. The point about this particular slide is do whatever you want. Make sure that you put things on paper because we will forget. Like it or not, which time you're going to forget. Okay. So at the end of lot of search is where you end up with. It's another comic from PhD Comics. So you do a lot of research just to make sure no one has already written it, right? Then you find a lot of papers online. You may find few papers which your advisor has written, few papers which your advisor has written but not told you about it, which may be crucial for your work. Okay, few of the papers with others have given you. You may copy a lot of papers, you may download so much papers. Eventually you have too many papers, but as I said, unless you organize, you will not be able to make anything out of this. Okay, so organization is very important. Right, so I have done a lot of talking. Let me start demonstrating on how to do the literature search. I'm sorry to have done these things because unless I tell you those points, you may not really appreciate what's going to come. And as I said, all this, whatever I said, is meant for those guys who are just getting into the research environment. There are various types of publications. The journal publications, conference publications, right? The important point about these publications is they must be peer authentic. What is peer reviewing? Peer reviewing is like other guys, other researchers, other colleagues around the world who are doing work. Unless they read, one cannot say that because one need authentication. Just like how we plan something. So we ask our friend, man, I am planning this. Shall we do this? Unless he says yes or no, you may not like to do it. The same thing is true. Such as when you're telling the world that this is my contribution to science, guys in science should read it and say that yes, well, this is not now. This guy has come up with this new information. So that's when it's a publishing. Okay. So to publish, it need to be peer reviewed. It has to be authentic. Unless a particular article is peer reviewed, you cannot. And so a logical extension of this particular statement is that whatever is published in newspapers, blogs, or that matter, or any free platform, is what that guy is thinking about it. Without a reference, you may not accept it. So that's why referencing is important. So what are the various types of journals? You have review articles, perspective articles, articles giving you opinion, comments, a letter, which is a short form of a very, very, very important timely contribution. You have suddenly observed something which would change the world, right? And then you need to give it the word before anyone else has done it. So what you do, you write a letter to the journal saying that this, I found it, it's very important. I have a lot of data, but I need to have more time to authenticate it. Please publish with this particular set of experiments. Then the referee goes, the editor gives you some referees. The referee will see it, they will look at your methodology and they say that yes, if that is good, accept it. So letter is something which is a little more relevant and most timely. Okay. And then you have this regular full-length article where you do some thorough work on a particular problem, all your findings. You may have short communications. Sometimes all these things you may end up doing something wrong. Then it is your responsibility to send an erratum to the journal. So erratum is trying to correct yourself before the other guy finds out you're wrong and throws you out. This is what you have learned from the Sean scandal recently. The guy was inspired the book called Plastic Fantastic. Okay, so I belong to that field, so I know more about that guy. Right? Whatever he has done, nothing could be reproduced. So the story was that he In fact, this happened during my PhD and postdoc time. So he was coming up with whatever is the latest fab of that. People will be talking about organic FETs. Then they will be discussing in a conference. If it is no FET, this is how we should come. After 3 months, there will be paper on it. Okay. Exactly saying what everybody was looking for. Then you have an LED, organic LED. There people in the conference people think, okay, if I develop an organic LED, it should have this features. This guy would go and give up. And so it turned out to be too good to be true, which led to the falsification and other things, which was discussed in the last talk. But this is possible if you tell that you're wrong. Because making mistake is not a problem. Okay, say making error is human, right? So we are humans and we are making errors, no problem. It is our responsibility to tell the journal editor that, man, sir, we found it is wrong. Can you retract the paper? No one will say anything. But if you don't say that and then someone else finds it out, then it's okay. That's where the academic integrity comes. So these are the various types of the papers, and various publishers are there, Elsevier, Springer, APS, and so on. I'm not going in detail. I just want to highlight few of this. From India, we have Indian Academy of Sciences and so on. So every country has their own Academy of Sciences. Everyone will publish. Few of them are good, some of them not so good. So how do you judge which paper is good? Okay, pretty complicated. So this is an example of a perspective article. As I say, the example I showed you upfront. Will any crap we put into graphene increase its electrocatalytic? It's a perspective article where these authors are giving their perspective, saying that, man, enough of publishing papers on graphene. Get a proper science out of it. Then you have this review article. Okay, so this is a review on electron transfer dynamics in dye-sensitive solar cells. Now, dye-sensitive solar cells is a big field by itself. And there is electron transfer happening, which is the process for DSSC, right? There's a key process is electron transfer. Now, various materials have various types of. So this particular paper tells what are the combined knowledge which people have got till that particular publication time in this particular area of electron transfer dynamics in DSSC. So this is a review article, and most of the review articles would have this word review on it. Okay. Then I said about a letter. Okay. So typical letters could be directly letters. You have Journal of Chemical Physical Letters, you have PRL, very common, famous physics journal, physical review letters. Most of one of the toughest to publish. So few of the journals also publish letters. So you have these letters, which gives you a short space to give out your most important. In optics, let's say you have optics letters. Then you have the full length article. If there's a full length article, how do you know what's a full length article? Look at these pages. You have 10 pages, 20 pages. People publish a lot of papers. Okay. And few of the journals highlight that it's a full paper like this. Full paper is written. Okay. Apart from that, you have the possibility of publishing in conferences, which is called conference proceedings. Many of these conferences, which we get a lot of invitations, end up as proceedings. Okay, it's called AIP proceedings or IUP proceedings. There are a lot of proceedings. So these proceedings are also important. They're Scopus indexed. Okay, so they're good. Okay, so in sciences, most of the times we give more weightage to the journals, and proceeding and conference is something which we do. However, if you go for engineering branches like, let's say, like electrical engineering or computer science engineering, they give more importance to the proceedings, because in conferences they quickly give. Technology is changing so fast that no one has time to wait for 4 or 5 months to get your paper published. Okay, so people don't rely on the publications. So each field has their own limitations and has their own requirements. So based on that, few journals are important, few conference proceedings are important. So when you're doing literature, so make sure that you do things which are thorough. Now, how do you judge a quality book? This is important to know, because nowadays anything and everything can be published. Anything. Give me a paper, whatever you want to write. Give me how to put rasam, sambar, in your own way. I can publish it. Because there are things where you can publish stuff. How to judge quality of it? There is a metric for it, which is now most accepted. It's called the impact factor or journal impact factor, right? It is frequently used as proxy for relative importance of journal within this field. Okay, so how do you do that? Normally it says that if you pick up a paper or a journal which has high impact factor, it is better than those journals which are low impact. Now how do you journal? How do you distinguish? How do you calculate these things? So this is the point. It's a metric that reflects the yearly number of citations that's articles published in the last 2 years given. So here I introduced you a word called citation. What is citation? Citation is all the, let's say you publish a paper and some guy is reading it. So if he is using your work for his work, he would cite you. Let's say similarly, you have 100 people on your work, so you would have 100 citations, which means your work is very important. It might happen that you publish your work and no one is bothered about it, so you'll not get it. So no matter where you want to publish, unless you have citations, the worth of the publication is important. So the quality versus quantity is important. The quality of the publication is journal judged by the citations, and quality of the journal is judged by the impact factor. So this is the formula for it. Citations for last 2 years by publications, number of publications last 2 years. Okay. Citations for last year and the previous year by publication of last year and number of publications. You take a journal like Nature, for example. In 2017, someone has calculated this Nature impact factor, which turned out to be 41.577. So it has a number of citations in 2016, number of citations in 2015, by the total number of publications in 16. So overall, the number has come to 41.57. The Nature is one of the highest impact factor journals. Some of the journals which I presented upfront in the previous slides has impact factor of 4, 5, 6. So typically, as a rule of thumb, we say that anything more than 2 impact factor is good. No problem. Now, finally, judge the quality of publication. It's important to know in which journal is the publication, the work published, the impact factor of the journal. Both are important. It might happen that you think your result is very good. You want to publish in big journals, big impact factors. They will not accept. So it's a game people play to publish in high impact factors, because somehow the word is that if you have a publication in high impact journal, your work is really good. But keep in mind that just a rule of thumb, right? It's a rule of thumb, because some of the best articles are published in low impact factor journals. I give you an example. Optics Communication. Optics Communication has an impact factor of 1.961, and this impact factor is representative of what happened in the last 2 years. Okay. However, if you look at the earlier paper, some of the best original articles on optics are published in this journal during 1970. So if you take the names of the Nobel laureates who got Nobel Prize in the field of optics, they all had published in optics. So again, as you know, these publications are all paid journals, right? You need to pay them to get the access to the journals. If you have access in your institute, it's not because you paid the journalists. Your institute has paid for the subscription. So these are all subscription-oriented journals. For publishing, you don't have to pay anything, but to accessing or to read what is published, people need to pay for. So it's a business model which many of the publishing houses have won it. So our idea of linking the quality of publication with the impact factor is being cashed by those guys. And so you may find some of the papers have suddenly increased their impact factors. Okay, so it's a game which everyone plays. It's important that you know what is everything. You should know, critically you should know what is happening. That's the point which I want to highlight. Okay, so the next rule to judge, and something which I find is the most important rule to judge a publication, is the number of citations. So when you look at various journals, when you keep downloading papers, when you're searching, make sure that you know what you're doing. Okay, so get your strategy right. Figure out a search strategy that works for you and note down the changes that you apply to it as in when. Decide your scope of search, because millions of articles are published every day, and the global and instant availability of data makes the internet a source of unending data. It is therefore your responsibility to decide how and when to limit your search. That is something which you need to do. No one will do it for you. You're a researcher, you need to. And importantly, understand the relevance of this unending available data to your research topic. You may need to broaden or narrow the focus of your topic depending on your research question. It is dynamic. Learn to live dynamic. I always tell my students, learning stops being linear after you reach MSc. After you reach your master's, learning stops being linear. You need to learn how to learn on it. Okay. So it is not that you have learned till now the next topic begins. It doesn't work that way in research. After you finish your bachelor's or master's, learning is always non-linear. You read something you don't understand, you go back and see what you don't understand. Now don't get stuck there. Come back, go to the next one. If you don't understand, find out what is relevant to the next question. So figuring it out up and down, going back and forth is what makes the whole research, right? That's the thing. Keep searching again and again, finding out the answer to the question which is happening, which you are seeing. Okay, that's why you need to keep yourself very, very dynamic. Finally, limit your search, but not your resources. While searching for literature, it is smart to limit your search by applying inclusive criteria, but you should definitely search for literature on your topic in various resources such as books, journals, class notes, what our people have said, random words, what your professor has uttered, what your friends have uttered. You will have knowledge from various sources. It's important that you keep an eye for all those things. Eye to see and ear for listening. Although searching on the internet gives you infinite result, you might still miss out some good quality. So keep your strategy of literature always open. Now, there are various databases like Scopus, Web of Science, Mendeley, Scholar, etc. to get you those literature. Word of cautions, 2 words of questions for that matter. Don't always rely on Google, Wikipedia, and Google Scholar because they're all free. Okay, I can add what I want. I can create fake data and put it there. Just like how we don't rely any of this newspaper. You are always critical about what to take, what not to take. Be sure about this part here also. Be critical what you read in Google, Wikipedia, and Scholar. If they are not published in good impact journals, be careful. Okay, that's the third part of it. Watch out for articles from predatory journals. I made a statement a couple of slides back. Give me any data, any paper, I will publish. As I said, I can even now publish how to make rasam and sambar. No problem. I'll find a journal for 1,500 rupees. You can publish anything. So make sure that you don't refer to those predatory journals. People do publish. So one needs to look at the authentication. That's where the academic integrity of the author is important, right? So if you don't know whether to trust the paper or not, look at the author, look at his profile, then you know whether to trust that guy or not, right? This is the point about it. It is not a word of caution, right? Make sure that you learn or try to pick up information from those predatory journals. So let's come back and see how to use some of these databases. One of the first things I picked up is Scopus. Scopus is a very nice popular search engine. It is not open source, so you need to pay for it, but it's most popular in sciences, most of the institutes, right? So how do you search? You have this kind of tool here. See this document search. You may search document based on article, title, abstract keywords. You can put some things and get out. You can search authors. For example, my last name is Ravi. You type Ravi and you get something, whatever is published. You may look at affiliations. Let's say you don't remember any guy and say that, okay, I know some professor in Princeton University has published something. Look at the publications of Princeton University. So you click here, write Princeton University and search. So that's how you can pick up from various things. I just picked up a search for organic solar cells, right? I work in solar cells, so this is it. What I searched for, and I find that in organic solar cells, I have 30,674 documents. Can I download all 30,675 documents? No. It is organic solar cells is a general topic. If you want to pick up something which narrow down my searches, I can write something here, search within results and search further. Okay, now I may have constraint in accessing something. So I may look for open access. I may look for something. So there are a lot of access types to it. So Scopus is something that gives you good publications. There are 4 points which I wanted to highlight. The document title, which gives you an information about what whether you can look it or not. Look at the abstract. Look at the author group. Most of the times, the last author gives you the authentication of the group. But then it might happen that some upcoming author who is not known has published a good paper. So don't judge the book by its cover. Keep in mind. Then you may look at the year, source, which page journal it has come, and the citations. As you see, this paper is cited 6,186 times. So this must be an important paper. No harm looking at it. Look at it. Then comes the second most popular, which is Web of Science. Okay, it's again not an open access but popular in sciences. The same whatever you have upfront is here. You can do basic search, auto search, advanced search. You can put topic, various things happening. Okay. Now, when I searched the same organic solar cells, I found 37,208 articles compared to 20,674 articles. So I have 7,000 more articles indexed in Web of Science. Now this brings to me a lot of index. So all these journals which you publish are indexed in some databases. Okay, it is important that index because people search these databases and only those journals which are indexed would show up in this. For example, I spent my 2018 summer 3 months to write a book chapter, and it so happens that that book chapter is not indexed in Web of Science. It's not indexed in Scopus and Web of Science. Okay, so I don't have any citations because people are not reading it. Even if I send someone, please cite my work, no one will read because they are not indexed. So when I contacted the journal, it's not some normal, it's not a local journal, but it's a Wiley publication. It's a good publication. I asked him, man, I trusting your Wiley publication. I have sent you my book chapter. Why is it not indexed? They say that, sir, Web of Science was taking a lot of money to index, so we will put it in Scopus. So they may take some more time. So again, second point to understand is that not all journals are indexed in Web of Science or Scopus. Even though some works are good, they may not be indexed. So you may keep looking at various sources. That's where the point of keep searching beyond journals, beyond these databases is important. Okay. Now coming back to this, you have 7,000 more. Now a point to understand here is that this search of the same organic solar cells gave me dye-sensitive solar cells review with 6,330 citations, right? And the second highest cited here is sequential deposition as a root of high performance perovskite solar cells. Right? This has citation of 6,000. Compare this with what Scopus has given me. Scopus has given me this particular paper, which is number 2 in Web of Science, has the highest citations, and this guy has 6,186 citations, right? 6,183 there, 6,062. So this again tells you that not all are available there. So you need looking at various sources to be. So that's why search is never ending. You may always lose a lot of information if you rely on one or two things. However, if the work is good, work is important, it would highlight. Okay, for example, this guy is published in Nature, right? This paper is published in Nature. So it has 6,000 citations, if not the right number, at least close. So this is how one can judge the quality of the search. Then comes the other kind of search engine, which is PubMed. PubMed is most popular in medical and biological sciences. I don't work in that direction, so I do not have any examples for it. But those who are into that direction may look into that. Again, the idea is here, put your key term and search. Then the Google Scholar. Free access, it allows individual author profile. So this is again most used because it is free. However, I have given you the word of caution. Take with a pinch of salt. If I type my name, I would get, if you type my name, you get this because it allows you free individual author profile. If you start publishing your own papers, you will have your own scholar. You can develop your own scholar profile and keep sending it. So this is how you track the authors. I have certain things for that. I come back to it, but if I type organic solar cells, I get 15,30,000 results. Do you see the difference? There you have 30,000. Here you have 15,30,000. So everything, anything, any newspaper article, okay, any local, whatever is there available on the net, Google will pick it. And it tells you these are the authors, which is the results which are there, and not a 2-3 minute search in 0.7 seconds, 0.7 seconds it gives. However, you have some ways to pick up what is good, that is the citations. See, one can look at the citations and see. Normally the best papers have higher citations. So Google Scholar picks this particular paper as a highly cited paper in solar cells. Okay, in fact, if you see these things, none of them have the papers which are highlighted. So again, same information, the same explanation, don't rely, keep searching. Okay. One more problem here with Google Scholar is that you cannot really search based on the number of citations. You don't have the option, but then eventually no problem. Okay. However, this is free and it's the first place to go and start your work. Then comes Mendeley. Now Mendeley has changed the field of search engines. In fact, it has taken the research community by storm because it suddenly gave things much free and it has its own, it's an open source, open software thing, which helps you to be a little bit more selective than Google Scholar. Okay, so here you can have your own free account. I have my account here, it's free, I made my own account. And once I type it, I can do certain things and I can map all my publications. This is my account. For that matter, you can have an account of anybody. I suggest those of you who do not have access to Scopus and Sense, download Mendeley and start looking. It's nice. So I type same search term organic solar cells in Mendeley. Now, this guy doesn't give me 30,000 like that, but at least it is something closer. Not 30,000, 35,000 like the most popular, and definitely not 15 lakhs like Google Scholar. It gives you something more closer relevant at 27,000 numbers. And also, it has its own limitations. Obviously, it is free, so it will find its own difficulties. However, you would still get decent amount of information from Mendeley. Okay, you have again possibility of searching in terms of citations. Okay. Now, the idea is here, you write something, you search, you can search from papers, you can search for people, you can search for groups, you get those various things. And also, there are a few things like feed, library, I will just demonstrate it later. And then comes ResearchGate. ResearchGate is another free thing. And there are certain controversies for ResearchGate because sometimes ResearchGate, not sometimes, earlier it used to allow you to upload your papers. So what people have done is they just uploaded the papers. If Scopus doesn't allow you, if Science Diary doesn't allow you to download a paper from their site, you can go to ResearchGate, go to a particular author, it is uploaded, upload it. Okay, so ResearchGate become what its popularity from telling to the world that it is the gate to the research, and so you may come, log in, join us, and download the papers you want. It has its own beautiful things. I can have my own profile, as you see here. Okay, and there I can do my own search. I search for organic solar cells. Now, instead of papers, like how the earlier search engine is giving, it gives the profiles of the authors which publish this field. So that way you end up getting names of those guys who are more popular, relevant in research. Okay, so then you can go there and start looking at it. You have options of looking for researchers, projects, publications. Many things are possible. If I say publications, then probably I would get more of publications from organic solar cells. But what I find most nice about ResearchGate is that I can start looking for persons with whom you can download papers free of cost. Yeah, this is what the point is. Now, there is a lot of debate. Few of the journals have sued ResearchGate. So what ResearchGate did is, it tells you the authors to upload preprints. The preprints are those papers which are the last version just before it's published. So every author, when they publish, they get a preprint for proof. So the proof would have some mistakes. However, proof may not be too bad. Proof is more or less the last paper. It has all the things which are supposed to be there. Data is correct, etc. The proofreading is mainly to correct things like change in author's number, the name, number, numbers here and there, small spelling mistakes. So they are there. So they're not completely correct. They're still preprints. So journals do allow such things. So you may find some preprints of papers in ResearchGate. So ResearchGate has its own relevance in the community of literature survey guys. Okay, now comes the concept of InflipNet. This is something which our Indian government has taken initiative to help us researchers in India. So InflipNet is about, as the name says, Information and Library Network Center. Okay, it is spread over various universities. A lot of libraries are part of it. In fact, you being an Indian can contact and search for various resources. Now it is mandatory that most of the thesis which students publish are part of it. This is the point here. If I go at if I show you what happens in the major activities, you have this open access initiatives where you have Shodh Gangotri. The Shodh Ganga talks about the collection of thesis. Okay? So if you go at Shodh Ganga, there are a lot of theses available in electronic thesis and dissertations. Okay, so there are 270,000 theses available. You type the name of the researcher. Let's say you know a senior who may have done work on your direction of research, who is not part of your institute, or who may not able to reach now because his email is not accessible. You may type his name, you may find his thesis there. Okay, so most of the people who are publishing, who are writing thesis, they have to, all the universities are now required to send their thesis to this Shodh Ganga. So you have the reservoir of Indian theses. It's a very good place to begin your research, right? Now, how do you track authors? I gave you my clue. Every researcher will have a profile in Scopus, Scholar, Mendeley, ResearchGate, etc. Okay, so it's a point which gives us more brownie, right? So if I have if I have a profile in Scopus or ResearchGate, people come and look at me. When they look at me, they may pick up some of my work. When they pick up my work, they may cite my work. When they cite my work, my citation index increases, so which I call it as H index. Okay, so all these things probably people will talk about it when they talk about technical writing. So I'm not getting into those discussions. It's not part of the talk. The H index is another metric which defines a research. So we have profiles across various databases. You can simply follow. There's a follow option on the page. Click and you follow. You can register for updates of the author. Every time the author publishes a paper, you'll get an alert. It's a mistaken alter. It's again an alert. You missed to email. This way you can be updated with a particular domain. In fact, Google Scholar does it. Okay. Simply say follow an author. It will automatically send your email. Send the email when every time that guy publishes it. Okay. So I would just stop this particular talk briefly, and I would demonstrate a few things before I go to the next one, which is reference database menu. I hope I'm sharing this. I'm sharing my browser. So here I have opened this Scopus data search just to see how it works. So I type whatever I started with, organic solar cells. Yeah. So when I downloaded it, when I opened it, it still shows me 30,674 documents. I showed earlier, but the first is not what I showed, because if I look at it, it is based on the year, but not site. So I can sort this in terms of what I want. I can say sort with highly cited, because citation is most important for me. Do it. I get this first paper which I showed you, right? Now, so now what I showed you, I have an option of searching based on citations. I have searching based on the data used. I can search based on relevance. Okay. Now, there are various ways to do it. I can also do this. I can choose all and analyze. When I analyze, I find I have various ways of statistics to be done. I will know that this particular field, organic solar cells, no one really cared till 1996. No one bothered. But from 1996, it has become one of the most hot topic, with the maximum number of publications in 2008, which is 3,124 papers published with keywords as organic solar cells. Okay, and this particular metric helps you to understand whether the field of your choice is relevant. Okay, you have these things. Then you can look at how the documents are per year. You can find who is the author which published the maximum numbers of papers. You can look at which country is publishing the most. China is always the most. Okay, like it or not, they do a lot of work. And then India figures out somewhere here, United States here. So you can have a metric of how particular direction of research is taken in various countries. It might happen that some work is relevant to your country, but not relevant to others. The USA may not work in that direction, but if that work is relevant to you, you will see that India is having a lot of work on it. So these things help you to do that kind of studies. Okay. Then, so you can analyze like that. You may look at it years, you may look from authors, then you may look from a subject area point of view. You may search in terms of articles, conference papers, reviews, book chapters. The various options are there. For example, if I say review, and I would limit my search to I have all the reviews papers which are listed here. Okay, again, these are all the review articles. Now I have removed my 30,000 documents from 30,000 to 1637. So I know that I have 16,000 documents which are review articles. Now I want to specifically search only for dye sensitized. So I have reduced my number of ranks to 847 document results. Now I know what are papers which comes out are relevant to dye sensitive solar cells, then I can look. So let's say I like this paper. I look at it. Now you look at this paper. This is a chemical review. By name, it itself says that it's a review journal. Okay. Similarly, if you see this, it's a Nature Photonics. You know Nature has a good. So you might look at it from Nature point of view. If I say click here, you can see those things. If I have access, I can download the paper. If I don't have access, I can. So all those things are possible. So one can do literature search based on these things, right? So that's so much so for Scopus. Let's show you what is Web of Science. The same thing is here. I will not spend so much time because it's the same idea. You do have possibility of topic, author, etc. Right? Possible. Then ResearchGate. The beauty of ResearchGate is you can ask questions. Okay. Ask question. How to plot. Okay. Immediately you get a lot of answers. You may pick up what are the answers. Right? Let's say you want to know how to analyze solar cell. I have no idea. Immediately you get some answer. Some guy has published or some paper has published specific to this particular question. Evaluation of solar cells. It's a journal. It's a chapter. It's an article. Okay. You have. If you are doing some simulations, there's a MATLAB part for it. So various things are possible by asking questions. Right. That's how you do for ResearchGate. Then how do I track authors? I have this so-called ORCID, collecting researchers and researchers. Okay, sign in. I hope password. Okay, now this is an open source, so all of us have our own profiles. Most of these researchers have their profiles in ORCID. Now journals, when we publish, it already asks you for the ORCID ID, so you may follow some guys with ORCID. So this is another way to track authors. Now something which is very relevant to India is this particular website. Please note it down. It is IRINS. Okay, click on this. It is Indian Researcher Informative Network System. Okay, so very specific to India. I type my name. Taking a lot of time. And you will see this. My profile is here. You can click on this. Immediately, whatever my profile generated by ID Hyderabad is there. Immediately, you will see all those which are there. So what IRNS is doing is it is taking out data from Scopus Web of Science. It is harvesting those data and collecting everything which is accessible to all of you. Okay, so it is free because Indian community. So all the Indian researchers have this now with one ID. See here, and so you can follow with one ID or simply type the name. Get it? I can type very famous guy. Okay, Professor C.N.R. Rao, he has his own ID. Yeah, so Professor C.N.R. Rao's publications, how he has published, what is his number of articles, what is his impact factor, what is H index. He has the H index of, it's going on, 133. Okay. So all these things are possible. So this is another point to follow. Now, another point about this IRNS number with an ID is that all these things are in one place: ORCID ID, Scopus ID, Researcher ID, Google Scholar ID. They're all there, so you can simply click on this and obtain. Okay, for example, my profile, I'll show you. If I go to Google Scholar ID, click there, you have my Google Scholar profile, right? So these things are possible, and that's how one can track the authors. Okay, so I would stop this here and go further. I think I'm running out of time. Sorry. Go to this. Okay, so that's how. So what I have demonstrated till now is how to download papers, how to search for papers using various data sources. Now, how do I manage them? That I have various options. One is EndNote. EndNote helps you to use download papers in citations and nicely collect everything in one place. It's good for writing papers, writing reference papers, reference format in a prescribed journal. It's nice to collect all the things in one place and write thesis. So EndNote is one point which is good. Now the point about EndNote is that you see you can have authors, have titles, journals, and also you can link it to paper. So I can quickly click on particular thing and I can click on this guy and obtain. Right, that's possible. Next comes the Mendeley. Okay, Mendeley is beautiful because just not a software to search for papers. It is also allowing you to use your reference management. Okay, so you can download it for your desktop. Once you download it, you have something like this. This is my own things. Okay, I can have my collections such that if I click on this, I can also see my papers. Okay, so you see these are all linked to a publication PDFs. So you can click on this paper. I was trying to do that for here. This 2015 paper, I click on this and I can open my PDF straight away here. This is what I did. So that's how you can relate your work and have your ideas. So one more point which I wanted to highlight is that I have created a folder called Organic Solar Cells. In this folder, I can save all those papers which I have downloaded relevant to Organic Solar Cells. Like that, you may create a lot of folders, and that's how you can manage it. Then comes Zotero. Zotero is another similar personal research assistant, similar to Mendeley. I never used it, but people do it. You can have a look at it. So it does the same thing again. You do option of saving it like this and putting them in various folders like this, right? So you have possibilities of you have various ways to manage your software. Okay, again, Zotero can be obtained for your, you can download this on your desktop. Okay, how do you save your files? Okay, saving files is very interesting. You may save in one of these reference managers you get. Other thing is you save on your hard drive. So saving is also equally important. It's not just you read the papers, you don't download the papers, you don't print all the papers. One of those where you could print this many papers, stack of papers. Now you put them in various folders, subfolders. So develop proper folder and subfolder system for hard drive. Name them as per the different projects you're working on. Like this. Okay, for example, I just have photovoltaic. Under photovoltaics, there are a lot of solar cells. I can have device physics as one folder. I can have a folder dedicated to perovskite solar cells, which is the latest fab. I can have spectroscopy of solar cells in one folder. Let's say I've downloaded some books on book chapters on that. Have that. So various possibilities are there. I put my literature based on my own subfolder system, which I think is relevant to. How do you name it? Naming is also very important because eventually you will have 2 GB of papers. Each paper would take how much? 200 MB, let's say 1 GB. 1 GB is too much, right? 100 MB is more relevant. Even 100 MB is too much. 10 MB is most common PDF size for good journals. 10 MB. Now you talk about 2 GB papers. So count the number of papers you will have. When you have so much of papers, how do you remember what to take? For that, find a way to name the article you download so that you can fish out easily. My personal take is I do this year _ journal name _ first author. So when you have 1, 2, 3 options, you will remember one. Somehow you remember one. At least even after 4 years, first author should be this guy. If not first author, at least I know this particular work is published in PNAS. Let me look at PNAS. So that's how you may start searching in your own database in your lab. Okay, so those things are possible. So I do this. For example, here I have year followed by the journal name, followed by the first author and the complete. Okay, few of you might get tempted to use the last author, but then remember, last author is typically a big guy who has a lot of papers. So the chances of him publishing a particular journal is more per year. So it's always good to remember the first author because that is unique. Okay, so that way you may know that I know this particular number of papers are published and saved in a particular folder. I can open that folder. Then I know that this is published in 2020. I can look at the 2020. If I don't remember, I would know that I want to look at someone with materials today. So I can look at the materials today. That's how it is easier for us to fish out the paper. Okay, so final remarks. I thought I would just show you something more. Let me take that option. I will just take 2 more minutes. Sorry. Stop sharing now. Share my Mandy desktop. Okay, so this is how my Mandy desktop looks, right? As I showed you, I can sort my work based on my publications, unsorted, organic solar cells. I do not have anything. Now I know that some publications can go to this guy. So what I do, I would go down. I'll see that there is a certain dice of solar server. I go there and put it. Now, whatever I want to know relevant to organic solar cell is here. Okay. So that's how you can create your folders and say whatever you want, right? Now, what options I have is here. If I have read it, then it will not show. If I have not read it, I can mark it as read. Let's say I want to read it again, I mark it as not read. Okay, so it is green. I want to read further. Now I know these authors, the title, etc. Let's say I click on this. Immediately I can see the paper, PDF of the paper. Now, this allows me various things. For example, I may highlight this certain copy. I can just highlight part of this paper, which is useful for my future. I may write some notes. Okay, and so on. I can do various things. I may use different colors. I can keep on going there, and then I may save. Even if I don't save, it is there. Okay, so it is there. I open it again. Whatever I have written is there. See that? So that way you can really manage your work more efficiently, more smartly. We're all right now belonging to age of information technology, so we should be thorough in all these things. Okay, so having said this, I'm ending my talk. Sorry for making it so long. Okay. As final remarks, this is what I want to end my talk with. Literature survey is a white-head cog in the wheel of research. Clarity of thought is the key in refining your literature search. Use various databases to collect the literature and make it exhaustive. Develop your methodology. It should be own methodology of maintaining a logical way to manage your literature by using proper reference management software. Saving the files with suitable names. Saving the file suitably. Identify a set of authors, groups who work on your area of research and follow them. So all these things are possible. There are few websites available online where you can download papers. One of them is Sci-Hub. Okay, so I don't want to put on this slides, but you can ask someone or you may contact me later to give you the website. I can give you. So in that, within that website, you can download any paper which is there published somewhere. Okay, so the point which I want to stop with is keep in mind where there is a will, there is always a way. Okay, if you want to do something, there is always a way. If you want to get a paper, there is always a way. If you cannot access some paper, you will always find some friend who has access and ask him. Otherwise, you will figure it out something. So this is what I want my talk with. There is where there is a will, there is a way. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santosh, for such a wonderful talk. I remember when I talked to you, you were asking me like what to talk about for 1 hour. But now when we see this, so much things are there. Even it can be a hands-on, for people to try out various things.
Yes.
Thank you. And can we take some of the questions live now? Or
Please. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, so there is a question like, what is the difference between ESCI and SCI journals? What are the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 journal?
Get it.
Can you see the question?
Yeah. SCI is Scopus Index Journal. ESCI, I don't remember what is this, but I need to look at Q1, Q2. Probably these are all quality factors, which is there. Okay.
Yes.
Normally, SCI journals are useful for a lot of these universities, institutes for maintaining ranks. Okay. So these ranks are counted. They count the number of SCI journals. So indexing is important because there was no way to look which papers are good and which are critical. As I said, all these indexing databases require a lot of money to index. So if I want to spend 20 lakhs for my journal to be indexed, I should be able to make so much of money in terms of subscription. If my journal is not a popular journal, no one will subscribe my journal. That's why there is a way to throw out the predatory journals. Okay, that's why this indexing is important. I need to look at what is ESCI. Don't remember. But SCIE is not there. I think it's SCI, Scopus indexed. Next question, please.
It's a gateway to how to do replace. Okay, so this thing comment only. Is it possible to export bibliography from Mendeley or other software into bibliography file for using in LaTeX?
For LaTeX, you have BibTeX. Okay, so directly when you look at a journal site, I said every journal has its own DOI. You can type the DOI and go to the journal link. There is an export option where you can export the citation in terms of various formats. For LaTeX, you have BibTeX. For Mendeley, RIS, these things are available. You can download them. And if you have your Microsoft Word, if you want to write it on that, install these things on Microsoft. In fact, they give you an option to do that, all these softwares. Then you can directly use that particular button, format your bibliography in your Word itself using Mendeley, EndNote, Jotero, all these things do it.
Okay.
But for LaTeX, it is BibTeX. You don't mix this and that.
Okay. Can we take articles related for survey? Because in my area, the research, the papers are not available. If available, it's like topics explanation. So it says that it's not the papers, but the survey. Can we consider it as a literature?
Yes. I'm not sure about this particular area because normally, if it is a research topic, somewhere some publication has to be there for authentic because peer review is important. However, you may have this surveys. Most of the surveys happen in humanities areas. So, yeah, if that is how that particular research is developed, then yes. But keep in mind, you should know how to judge whether to rely on that or not. The judgment is very important. Reliability is a problem right now.
Okay. One more question. I write a literature review. Will I get a clear idea about my research from the author? So, literature reviews, can we write like that, or it is an invitation based?
No. You can write literature review.
Okay. Yeah.
You can write literature review and submit to journals.
Okay.
Then it will be peer reviewed for publication. But then literature review cannot be for general. So normally, something like a DSSC or organic source, which I showed you with 7,000 teachers, they are all supposed to be invited because such general topic has to be very, very popular or one of the guys who started that field. A review article typically are more focused. Let's say you want to address a particular question in a particular research area. You write a review article answering that particular question by all the groups which have worked on it. Okay.
So we'll take one of
For example, I showed you earlier, right? DSSC has a lot of components. Electronic charge transfer dynamics is one part of it. So an article was only on charge transfer dynamics. That's a focused review.
So we'll take one or two questions and we'll close this. And any questions are there that we'll get back to you. We'll mail you back if whatever way we can connect you. So there's a query that if would conference proceedings in AIP, JOP count equivalent to journal papers as they are Scopus index? Can one put them for PhD thesis?
Yes and no. Every institute, every university have their own Senate rulings. Okay, but then Scopus index is counted always.
Okay. So one
It is
journal
always
is
content.
okay. One journal is in
Normally 2 journals or something. Again, it's to depends on the stream. If it is a conference, if it's an engineering stream, then let's say computer science, they take the conference proceedings as equivalent to journal. If it is a pure sciences, then they don't really give the weightage to the conference proceedings, because normally what people do is they present that work in conference and then write a full paper. So the same data is published in.
okay. So one last question we'll take and we'll close this. If one journal is in Scopus last year, uh, but not now, can we file a case against the journal for cheating us? We cannot do that. But the
I'm
question,
not
I guess,
qualified to say such. I'm
no, no,
sorry, I'm not qualified to answer that.
no, no. I think that the question is like the Scopus. No, some of the indexing journals, they lose their indexing. So what will happen to those
No, no, if
papers?
there is, I mean, my point of how I would take this point is that if you know it is indexed, have
Yeah.
a proof of it and then show it to your. So eventually, indexing or non-indexing is only for convincing our authorities to practice.
Okay. Okay, then remaining questions we will answer through offline. Like we have shared the one feedback form kind of thing, and it's a kind of attendance sheet also. So you can get it in the question answer session, and those participants can fill that form. And thank you, Dr. Santosh, once again for such a wonderful talk.
Thank
And
you for your invitation. Yes, I learned a lot. I'm not
yeah,
sure about you guys, but I learned a lot doing this. Yeah, thanks.
okay, thank you.